Hello and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 68, and we, three grown men, boldly criticize a child actress while giving our first impressions of the Obi-Wan show. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Welcome back to the pod, ladies and gentlemen, listeners all out there. You may have noticed that Mike Smith not in the opening credits once again. Part-time Mike just taking another weekend off, y'all. Savon, how we doing?
I'm doing great. It's a beautiful day. The sun is out.
There's no mic to needle you at all.
Oh yeah, normally Mike would just find a reason to be on my bumper. Yeah, now in the chat, y'all see I had to hop on his bumper now because he's just not bringing that ignorant Mike energy we used to seeing. I'm like, okay, well, someone has to be an antagonist, and I'm like, all right, I've had to step up a little bit and be the bad guy that we need, not the one we deserve.
I like how you're describing it as your bumper. I'm just imagining you and Mike as cars in the movie Cars. And his bumper actually coming up against your bumper.
Yeah, I'm just like, yo, why are you on my bumper? And he's just like,
yo, come on.
Some kind of
Don't make me call Mater on you.
All right, well, we've got a really great show today. I'm excited. Disney Plus, Obi-Wan, Kenobi dropped their first 3 episodes already at the time that we're recording this. What a contrast to the Book of Boba Fett, which we sort of slogged through a few months ago. This one has had depth, it's had intrigue. The characters have been really fun, at least for me. I will maybe hear a little bit different from Savon in a second here. But Ewan McGregor, what is he? Scottish? Welsh? Scottish.
I think he's Scottish.
Scottish.
Yeah. It's always surprised me when he talks in his normal voice, his regular speaking voice. I'm like, whoa. All right. So Ewan McGregor back as Obi-Wan Kenobi, or as he's going by now, Ben Kenobi. What are you liking so far? Savon, what is actually tickling your fancy here?
Yeah. So I think what I'm enjoying so far is that Ewan McGregor's just a good actor. So this is kind of similar when we were talking with Moon Knight, where if the lead is just a talented actor, that in itself just is going to go a long way. I'm appreciating that this show's kind of not afraid to be brutal and really show what things are like under the Empire. And, Star Wars really skirts that line between family friendly and like, oh, this person just got chopped in half
by a laser wall.
Yeah, but this I like that Obi-Wan's I like that this show is leaning into the dark time period that we're existing in. Like, yes, it's Star Wars, but like, hey, the bad guys won and this is what it's like, and it's not nice. I'm appreciating that tone. It sets a good tone for the story.
Ooh, it is dark. I mean, the first scene, am I wrong, was Order 66.
Mm-hmm.
And the same week as the Uvalde shooting. Maybe a bad look, Disney, but still, that's quite a way to set the tone for this for the series. And along with that, the show just really does take its time, stretching out that mood, that feeling of, okay, things are changing, things are going to the dark side. It's getting dark out there and people are afraid. And we get that in spades watching the Inquisitors do their thing, terrorizing normal people. And there's a sense of pending danger throughout every episode so far. I just like that we get this well-paced yet urgent kind of story happening. And it's all tied together by Ewan McGregor, really. They're able to take so many silent moments of him just brooding because he's a good actor and you like his face. In some ways, I hated Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan in the prequels because the prequels were really bad for me.
I'm glad you said for you. I appreciate that.
But seeing him, I mean, for y'all when you were kids and it came out,
yeah,
you probably ate it up.
Exactly.
I had, my brain was a little bit more fully formed at that time when it came out. So
they were bad.
I can have an honest critical opinion about it because I was a full human at the time.
Wow. Wow. Kids
So-
are full humans.
You were like 8. What did you know? You just saw laser
Dude,
shooting.
I
and
was
you were
like
excited.
15
Pod
or
racing.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah, so seeing Ewan McGregor on screen, you're taking up this mantle once again. Even though I hated on the prequels, I was really happy to see him as Obi-Wan. You know, he's a character that I immediately connected with, despite what I felt about the prequels, and that lends itself to the plot moving forward, and for us caring about the stakes of this show. When Obi-Wan is in danger, you really feel the danger. When the Inquisitors are at his doorstep, it has a lot of weight, and that is what is carrying this show through.
Can I say 2 things about that? I think one scene that illustrates that what you're talking about, I think, really well is actually when he's in the back of the truck with Freck, the mole alien guy, and they are imminently in danger, right? Like, there are stormtroopers right next to them, and it's not that... It's interesting, right? Because we know that Obi-Wan can make really short work of stormtroopers if he was at the height of his powers, but we know he's not. And he can't also do it because he has to protect Leia's identity, and they slip up. And there's that moment of like that creates so much
he
tension.
definitely
and
he
danger.
slips up.
Leia
Yeah.
was doing a good job.
Yeah.
She was running that show.
Obi-Wan fumbled the bag.
She's
sold.
straight up con artist.
Yeah, and that required no violence. That required no, physical kind of acting or anything like that. It was literally just in the presence of having the stormtrooper, having Freck be there, and that knowing the stakes of Leia's identity could be taken out, and then all of a sudden, and his identity, right? He also needs to keep himself hidden for him to be able to help Luke later on as his mentor. And this moment is just fraught with danger. But what was interesting was they not only took that moment of danger, but they also created a moment of connection between him and Leia by having him talk about how he talks in a double way about how Leia reminds her of her mother, reminds him of her mother. And that's really important for them to be connected. Otherwise, like, the reason him and her connecting and trusting each other isn't going to make sense. And so they're building these moments in, even in moments of danger, they're showing like how important this is to both of them.
Well, she doesn't trust him. She's already called that out, like verbally out loud of like, hey, yo, you're keeping stuff. You're lying. Clearly, you're not telling me everything. I don't trust you. Like, she says that herself. So, on the nose in like the best way.
Yeah. But I mean, like, contrast that with like Doctor Strange and America Chavez. There wasn't really a reason why they should trust each other, and they never really called that out. But in this show, they are doing moments like this so that Leia has some sort of trust for him, and he's saying like, hey, this is why I'm looking out for you, right? And you could tell it's genuine. So we'll see.
That was so unnecessary.
What was
so
unnecessary?
much side eye from Savon.
That was so unnecessary.
It's like, why you gotta bring in Doctor Strange?
Like, that was such a just unprompted, just shot.
Oh, well, that
Wesley just
just
looked off to the
recorded
side. Pow! That was like 3 weeks ago. It's fine.
Not all of us had the same opinion about Doctor Strange.
Just the moments between them.
Nope, we're not relitigating that.
Okay,
Nope, we're not doing that.
All right, Mike. Mike times 2. I agree, though. I'm not going to repeat what Brian said. I think Ewan McGregor has been a huge asset to the show. Everything that he's doing, I'm buying 100%. I think there are some rough edges around some of the other actors sometimes, but he's been 100% spot on and 100% believable, and I'm invested in his journey. That's cool. The antagonists of the show are the Inquisitors, which we haven't seen in live action before, but have shown up in some of the animated works. They go by Fifth Sisters or Fifth Brothers and the Grand Inquisitor, and they all wear the black. They're Force sensitive. They're Force users. Some of them are former Jedi, it seems, or former trained Jedi, maybe. It's interesting that they're sort of the antagonists here, even though Darth Vader's in the picture. They're sort of the main ones moving the story forward. It's kind of interesting. So, Savon, how are you feeling about the Inquisitors? Are they working for you as antagonists?
So what I'm appreciating most about the Inquisitors, one, just to say I'm loving them as antagonists. I think what works with them is Star Wars, and they've done a good job of, compared to the original trilogy, having more dark-sided Force users. And what it does is that it gives you dangerous antagonists for your shows and for your characters, but it doesn't have to be Darth Vader, who you can then build up as like the final boss, the big goon. He doesn't just come out to casually hunt Jedi. He has people who do that. He only comes out when it's some big important fish. And so it kind of works two ways, where you get more potential villains who you can have unique, cool stories for. They can still do cool Star Wars stuff. And then it also just makes Vader look even more BA when he finally appears, which, surprise, surprise, that's exactly what happens in episode 3, right? Like It was having other people be around and use the Force and stuff. And then Vader come out later really builds up like, yo, that's Vader. He is built different. There's levels to this. All that to say, I love the Inquisitors in that regard. Sure. There's clearly tiers amongst each other with them. And I love the infighting. I love when you just have inter-conflicts within groups that are still on one larger side. Yes, they all still hate the Jedi, but they all want different things, have conflicting goals, clearly have different backstories. Watching it play out has been great. And I've said it before, I know she's been very polarizing online. I believe Moses Ingram is her name. But I've really enjoyed watching Reva as, I believe, the third sister in the show. I love her hot-headedness. I love her brutality. I love that it's brutal in a way that isn't necessarily the right call to make. And so you have fallible villains who can advance the plot and do big things, but still clearly make mistakes. And it's not just like, oh, everything's going her way. She's still pissing people off, and she still has actions that could very much burn her down the line. But also, she's a former Jedi, so I'm curious. Like, I think she's the child from the Order 66 scene in the beginning, and clearly she has an ability to touch minds and get information from them in a way that other Force sensitives can't. And I think all of that is building up to some really fun villain interactions. So I'm loving the Inquisitors. So there's going to be a fight between them. There's going to be another fight between them in upcoming, and just that alone is just engaging to me. So.
Yeah, Reva's a real wild card in this. And I think that takes the series to a new level, right? Because it could have easily just been the Empire's hunting Obi-Wan, or the Empire's hunting Leia and Luke, or whatever, and Obi-Wan has to intervene, right? And that still would have been a fine story, but they take this they add another texture to the series by giving us the Inquisitors, and not just the Inquisitors as, faceless antagonists who are scary, right? Like, they're not just Dementors or something like that. They're or just casual stormtroopers. They gave us Reva, who has her own agenda, obviously. There's lots of infighting, as Siobhan said, and she's a bit unpredictable. She kind of goes off the rails, right? She does things that the other Inquisitors don't like. She murders the Grand Inquisitor. Like, he's gonna come back. Probably one of the best scenes, and we don't necessarily know what she's going for exactly. Aside, I think there's something more than just her trying to curry Vader's favor, right? As Siobhan alluded to, like, there's probably more of a backstory here. And that added level of plot, and like the villains having their own plot line, I think gives us something different that I don't think we've seen a lot from Star Wars. Like, Star Wars can be very binary, right? And kind of one-dimensional. But they, giving the villains some character and life adds much needed depth. And I think it's actually going to help us understand Vader more too in the end. So I'm looking forward to all of that.
If Siobhan's idea around Reva being one of the Jedi younglings in the beginning are correct, that does sort of speak to maybe some of her motivation around punishing the Jedi for not protecting them, right? Or for getting in bed with the Empire, having the trust and protection of these younglings, and then totally giving up the ghost when the clone troopers went off. And she may not understand that was a deeper subplot by the Empire. She may just think like, hey, y'all like left us for dead and we're just a bunch of fakes. You promised us that you would give us like this training. You promised that we would do good, and instead we all got crushed in this ambush and this massacre. So yeah, that may be something that drives her. It maybe not. We'll see what really drives her. But I think you're right about the depth that she's bringing.
And Obi-Wan says that thing in the truck in episode 3, right? When he's with the mole guy, and he says to Leia, I didn't know my family either, right? Because I was taken by the Jedi, as an infant or whatever. Maybe I have a brother. I don't really know. And that was a plot point that I'd never really considered too much before. They're also, I mean, the Jedi are up to some nonsense in that regard, really, like stripping families apart. And so if Reva is, kind of like takes that idea, and it's worse because of Order 66. And so she represents another side of the coin of having dealt with that kind of childhood trauma.
Yeah, another instance of the Jedi actually being
the
bad,
Jedi,
right?
Yeah,
it adds another dimension. And the Clone Wars shows, just because they had so many seasons, they do a decent job of exploring the concept of, it's two sides. Like, hey, your child can be an intergalactic peacekeeper and hone their gifts if they learn they're force sensitive, and they could have a life of relative comfort and all this and altruistic. But yeah, to that same point, I'm glad that we finally have mainstream Star Wars really leaning into like, hey, for better or for worse, they still take them from their families as kids, and there's multiple sides to that. Like, they don't really, and you think they would explore. I mean, for Anakin, it makes sense because his life is a horrible situation, so you don't really think about the flip side of that. Of like, well, you're a slave, dude, so this is literally an upgrade in every regard. But for lots of other Jedi, to your point, they had stable families and regular lives and stuff, and it's just, yeah, what are you setting people up for when you involve them now into this order that's in a philosophical eternal battle with the dark side?
Well, and is ideologically committed to the idea of not having attachment.
Yep.
Right?
Yes,
when humans
absolutely.
are 100%, well, not just humans, like social beings are 100% based on their social connections, and you've taken those important familial connections away.
Yeah, so that's something they could definitely explore, and I'm excited for that.
Savan, I appreciate you not bringing my 21-22 Lakers into your analogy about the Inquisitors. Thank you very much.
Okay, time
Thank you, though. Thank you, though. You did it yourself. This is even more satisfying. I was like, I'm gonna let him live.
So what in this show isn't working? We've had some pre-talks in our group chat, and not everything is working. What is kind of leading to your skepticism, or you're just like, just not buying it? Savan, why don't you start us off?
So there's a couple things. And again, I want to just preface that the third episode redeemed a lot of it, and I don't think it'll be an issue as much later, but it still stood out. Pretty much every chase scene involving Leia just took me out. Again,
it's the worst.
I said this in the pre-show.
How far does she run on those little tiny legs and never gets caught? And like, she's juking them out of the way and ducking under a tree. Like, bro, that's not even that hard.
Yeah, like this is what I said in the pre-show. Because some people, maybe they just don't have to interact with kids, and that makes sense. I've worked at a school. I've had to do recess and activities and games and stuff with kids all the time. Catching a child that age takes minimal effort. I could have caught Leia like half trying on a bad knee and still be able to just close the distance and grab her. Like, that was just really hard for me to watch.
And then they did it again in the second episode.
They did it like 3 times.
Oh,
bro.
my Lord.
Half of Leia's arc in the beginning is just her running away from things and just having Looney Tune levels of just maneuverability and evasion.
And then they do it all with shortcuts, so you never get a sense of how close the people are to her, but it's like, bro, this has been going on for 3 minutes now. Y'all definitely should have closed the gap at this point. Like, it's way past time.
Yeah. So that was something that just stood out to me. It didn't like ruin the show, but I can't pretend it didn't stand out.
All right.
And then some of the scenes, especially when Obi-Wan's kind of infiltrating the city looking for Leia, it just felt like they needed to just get through these parts, and the execution was kind of just like, like the idea of him just having that drug bomb to stun everybody and everyone's looking for him on his face, but he doesn't even have like a helmet or a mask or any real attempt to hide his identity. It was just little moments that was just like, really? Like, this feels very like no one's really trying a little bit.
But the spice bomb, they showed how he got it. Like
it wasn't the fact that he got it. It's just the idea of this, like that trope and idea of just, we got you at gunpoint, I'm just gonna throw out my drug smoke bomb. Just felt very like, campy Batman level of just like, okay, we just gotta advance. We just gotta keep him moving forward. That kind of took me. I can't lie, I just wasn't a fan of that. It looked kind of hokey, especially for Obi-Wan, who's a more competent character. It's not like, it felt very cartoonish, but it didn't ruin it for me. But I was, and then the biggest, most unrealistic part: who the hell is giving away drugs for free? No one is just giving out drugs.
It's a sample. They get you hooked on the first one, and then you come back for more.
Free.
Have you ever done drugs? That's not how that works. You don't have to answer that on here, but I'm saying, like, anyone here who I know, people have listeners who have done drugs, unless it's some very people, strangers aren't just like, yeah, here you go. I'll never see you again. Here, take this. Especially just out on the street.
All right. Maybe that's true.
If so, then if that's the case, then I'm clearly messing up. Like, oh, where have been the free drugs been?
You just gotta wear your robes. Somebody's gonna give it to you.
Right, just walking around looking for free drugs.
You look like a Jedi that could use this. Here,
yeah, look like you
this
need
one's
some.
on me.
Look like you gotta forget some stuff, bro.
Yeah.
No, but those moments stood out, but it wasn't the end of the world.
Should have had a Walter White cameo for that scene.
Oh, that would be kind of awesome.
Instead of Kumail Nanjiani. Yeah, so I think for me, like it's pretty similar. There, I think Deborah Chow, the director and executive producer of this series, is doing a good job so far. Just like making things feel really cinematic, very well paced. Again, the stakes and the danger driving us through this series are working at a nice clip. But then every time that there is a moment of actual action, whether it's a pursuit, a chase, even some of the fights, it just leaves your head scratching. It's like, wait, that didn't make sense. Like, Leia's running down the tunnel, and then suddenly Reva, third sister, is at the opposite end of the tunnel, but just a minute ago we saw her on the other side. Like, how did that happen? And then
because she's an adult and can run faster than Leia.
Yeah, but the spatial continuity still felt just kind of funky at moments.
Yeah,
I'm just like, even my subconscious was just like, that don't feel right.
And then the woman that was helping Leia, that was being the escort at first, leaves, and then like she doesn't run into third sister on the way out. And then
she didn't take the tunnel. Riva goes around the tunnel. She just jumps to the end.
Oh my goodness! Oh yeah, because she's like a parkour hero.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you remember anything about her parkour skills, they look really cool on rooftops, but they don't get her anywhere. Like she never arrives at the scene of the action, even though she like dives off of a building and lunges forward for everything, but like never gets there. Like,
well, that's just Star Wars in general. Like, if you watch Star Wars movies, people always kind of never actually catch the person they're chasing. I could spend 5 minutes talking about moments where someone chased someone, probably could have got him and was just like, I'm not about to chase you. Like Vader does it in almost every appearance. Like if you rewatch, he does it consistently. He never catches anybody. He just causes a bunch of stuff, then stands dramatically as they just escape.
He did that in episode 3.
In episode 3, it was like
the fire somehow blocked him from getting there.
Yeah.
Like, bro, you got force powers. Just pick him up and bring.
He did it in
side.
Rogue One. Remember when he tears up the ship and he just stares while the people fly over at the thing? He did it fighting Luke when Luke falls down. He likes to just watch. A lot of times he just doesn't like to chase his prey.
Hey, maybe his tech needs to buffer. He needs to buffer. He's downloading something new and a system upgrade update. Who knows? Last one. You brought up the stormtrooper getting cut in half by the laser fence.
Oh yeah,
amazing, dope scene. Fun. Oh, like Obi-Wan showing his stuff, taking out like 4 stormtroopers, and then what happens after he removes the laser fence? They're approached by a truckload of stormtroopers. Oh no, not a truckload. It's only 3. And he lays down his gun. Like, what? Come on, man. You just took out like the same amount of dudes just a moment ago. You could do this again. So there's some inconsistencies and logical disruptions that have been time and time again pulling me out of the show. And when they're happening in episode 3, after we've already seen them happen a few times in the first 2 episodes,
you're like, this is just going to continue.
Like each one is a bigger and bigger blow.
Obi-Wan went from having stormtrooper aim at some points when he was fighting on the rooftop to missing all his shots, which I could live with if he's out of practice. Like, okay, he's out of practice, he just can't hit a shot. I can live with that. But then to your point, Brian, when he's in the desert, suddenly he's just Hawkeye and it's just blink, 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 blink. I'm like, all right, B, like, where are we with it? You're like the J.R. Smith of shooting right now. Like, you're hot, you're cold. I need to know what I'm getting.
He's got bad night vision. I don't know what it is.
In that same scene with the fence, he defeats that first group of stormtroopers, And the fence, right, is blocking the road, so it prevents like vehicles from going through. But literally, there's just fence posts on the edge of the road, and you could an individual could walk around the fence post. But he spends a lot of time breaking the fence post so that the fence part is not actually active anymore. I was like, you just walk around it.
Obi-Wan's not a jaywalker.
I thought he wanted to take the vehicle. Is my interpretation.
Okay.
Of like because they're in the desert walking. The whole even the troopers were like hitching a ride. That was my trust me. I like to go hard on stuff because I thought about that and I was like. I guess they're in the desert, so I guess he needs to have like a vehicle instead of just walking with the girl.
Okay, he did not go back in the driver's seat.
Did he not go back in the driver's seat? I'm going to have to rewatch that scene. Oh, well, then I don't know what to say.
But then the stormtroopers showed up, so maybe that's why. He didn't have time to go back. I don't know.
Maybe he was going to clear a body first, or maybe he was going to bury them and do a ceremonial funeral,
Hold on. We going too hard on the stuff we don't like. There's still a bunch of stuff I do like we need to...
All right. So... you know what? I'm gonna spare Boba Fett the comparison.
Cool, thank you.
What in this show is working for you? I want to go first. I think seeing Obi-Wan refuse to open himself up to the Force in the same way that Luke sort of did in episode 8, and the lack of sort of growth and connection that he has because he is sort of hunkering down, right? He's protecting himself, protecting Luke and Leia from getting detected, but that means he's not been using his Force power, so he's not as hyped as he was in episode 3, and so he's really been someone who's been humbled a few times because of that. And I think those moments are really working. We're not seeing Obi-Wan at the height of his powers. We're seeing Obi-Wan at sort of a very diminished point in his career, and maybe as the course of the show goes on, maybe he will increase and maybe he won't, right? Because when we get to New Hope in episode 4, he's not a very powerful user. He's like able to kind of mentor Luke a little bit, but as soon as he goes up against Vader, he's like, I'm kind of done with this now. He knows he's no match for Vader at that point. So it's kind of interesting to see him at his peak in Clone Wars and in episode 3, and now he's very much down where he is. So that's been a cool moment actually for me, seeing him struggle to actually get his powers to work again. Even saving Leia, it's not an easy thing for him. He barely gets her right before she gets to the ground and has to drop her almost immediately. So that leveling up or leveling down of Obi-Wan, so to speak, has been actually very cool, and I think it's worked really well for the show. Brian?
On the other side of that, I think our antagonists, our villains, are definitely a real high point, and unexpectedly so, right? Like, you coming into the show for Obi-Wan, but you're leaving with Reva, the third sister, and everything that they're doing. And so
her rage is magnetic, right? Like you can't look away.
Yeah. When she gets mad, I'm like, I get like actually uncomfortable. It's almost like the boys level of like, oh God, I'm uncomfortable about what this person's about to do right now.
Yeah. Yeah, when she got into what's his face?
Owen. Owen's
Uncle
grill.
Owen. Oh,
dude,
my
I was
goodness.
like, oh my God. This
and
is
he lives.
What is
right?
gonna happen?
Yeah, he lives.
Yeah, but
so the
and it
testament
doesn't take
to
away
them
the stakes.
that it still was fraught with tension, and you really thought that she was gonna cut a bitch. So
she was.
Yeah, like something had to pull her off of the ledge for that, and also by the end of the episode, we have another Jedi who's strung up in the streets, right? And so Obi-Wan's own hunkering down, his
he actively rejected the kid, and like that led to his death. Like you gotta, know,
absolutely.
You gotta call
so
it what it is.
Had consequences, right? Had real consequences, and we see the Inquisitors kind of using that as a strategy, and then they throw us Darth Vader, right? Like we get that incredible smash cut, I think, at the end of episode 2, where we see him in the hydro tank or whatever.
The
his
eyes
open up. That's just ominous and really cool. And then we actually get to see him in action in episode 3, and he looks as threatening and menacing as he ever has been. And then he rakes Obi-Wan through the fire. I was not expecting that. I did not think that they would go there. But this, as we have been saying, this show isn't afraid to go dark and really show us some depravity. And I think it pays off. It pays off in a lot of ways that other Star Wars properties don't, because we never get to see how bad it can get. Right.
The
We
most we got was Anakin in episode 3.
Yeah, exactly. And usually, you know, things are happening at a distance, something explodes, we don't know exactly what, or, you know, stormtrooper fire doesn't hit anything. But in this, Obi-Wan's going through the fire, literally. So so props to the show for taking us there.
Yeah, and it's certainly, I mean, obviously Anakin and Darth Vader are the cruelty that he's showing is also based on his journey in episode 3, right? Him being burned alive on Mustafar after fighting with Obi-Wan, he completely blames Obi-Wan for being his block in the way of his journey, right? And his he's clouded by the dark side, but he ends up burning alive in the lava or in that, you know, environment. And so his wish for revenge in this moment, he's not interested in just like killing Obi-Wan. He wants Obi-Wan to suffer in the same way that he feels like he's been suffered, right?
He said, this is the start. This is just the beginning. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So he really
so this is like important for him to make this point. Nah, bro, I'm on level 100. You're on level 10, and I blame you for everything right now. And like, you're going to feel that. Which you're right. We didn't really see that. I mean, like, even in the original trilogy, we didn't get to see him be that cruel. Right? He had levels of power. He would choke out his, his second and thirds in command, but he wasn't cruel in the same way that he is right now. He's out for blood, and so creates a great amount of, you know, fear for this character.
He was just straight breaking neck. Like, didn't he like kill somebody's son? Like, he killed some dude, and then the dude's son came out and he killed the son too. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, it wasn't even a choke, right? Like, we've mostly seen him apply steady choke. Pressure.
Nah, he hit him with just hey, we keeping it moving. Hey, I got places to be. Vader
I don't
stuff
know
to
that
do.
we've seen. Have we seen that from Star Wars before? Like a quick action force use?
Nah, it's always just been like a dramatic long choke.
Yeah,
which obviously both are awful. Obviously both are awful, but they didn't go full just like neck snap.
Yeah. And these are like non-combatants. These are non-Imperial people. Usually we see his cruelty with Imperial people.
And rebels and stuff, yeah. And like,
we rarely get to see it here. Yeah. In this context. So these are new levels.
Yeah. He's going full like back to Tatooine, Tusken, like, yo, men, women, children, anybody could get it. He does like full war crime, which was really, really dope to see because, you know, we see...
You heard it here first. Savon is in favor of war crimes. He thinks they're dope.
War crimes.
In the context of Darth Vader, absolutely. I was texting Mike about this. I was saying, this is basically just going into like his Hall of Fame mixtape highlight reel of just great Vader moments of him just being depraved and evil. And it's like, yeah, here's another just top moment of him just walking through a city and just casually snapping necks on just to make a point to draw out Obi-Wan, right? And it was sick. Like, yeah, they didn't tone it down. I was uncomfortable.
And so far, we've been spared Hayden Christensen, so I'm all for it.
Haven't we seen him a couple times? We saw his ghost in the distance when Obi-Wan was hallucinating.
We didn't see his acting.
We haven't had. I
think that's what we've been spared.
Oh, you're not about to just hate on. You're not about to just hate on my son Hayden, but you know what? It's fine.
We've gotten James Earl Jones and James Earl Jones recreated through AI, which has been a beautiful thing. So,
is that what they did? That's amazing.
They had him apparently like way back in like even like the 80s, 70s. They had him just read out of a dictionary and have an absurd amount of words on deck just so that they could. They did that a while ago, so they have a huge library of just words so they could damn near make them say whatever they need to.
Could you imagine being asked to do something like that and thinking like, "Wow, they really don't think I'm going to make it"?
It's like, you know, it's just them playing
in the
along.
80s, that kind of technology didn't exist.
Yeah, so plus a bunch of the original cast.
You still cut it together.
Yeah. I guess so.
Plus a bunch of the OG cast people, they old. People be dying. Like, that happens. It's a thing.
People be dying.
No,
it's a true statement.
The biggest thing I've loved about the show, though, and I've not complained, but my biggest reservation about the show was that Obi-Wan in this actual movies doesn't really have a real conflict or struggle, right? A lot of his biggest moments don't really involve Anakin's fall to the dark side. All of Anakin's lowest moments, Obi-Wan is completely separated from, right? The death of his mother, a bunch of the Padme stuff. Like, Obi-Wan's not really involved in that. And I always felt again, he's a good deuteragonist. Can he be a good protagonist? Don't bring that word back out. And
Ba-ding.
yeah, and he just doesn't have any real flaws. In the movies, he's calm, he's collected, he's wise, he's open to feedback. He's everything you want someone to be, right? And now, like, he's cynical, he's mean and short with Leia. I love the stormtrooper scene in the truck, because you're right, he's making active mistakes of like, yo, B, all this mess you're talking to Leia, and you're the one fumbling the story and getting, having people be suspicious. Him getting absolutely wrecked by Vader, and even Vader clearly just pitying him, like, yo, this is pathetic. Like,
yeah,
like,
Vader one hands him, right? He doesn't use two hands. He just says, I got you with one hand tied behind my back, and I'm just going to overpower you.
Yeah, and then and part of the reason why he clearly let him go is like, this isn't like, what is this? This is not even worth my time. But all of that really, to your point, sells like Obi-Wan's reaction to hearing, oh, Anakin is Darth Vader. Anakin's alive. And then Obi-Wan just going full 1,000-yard stare. They've done a great job of really selling that this Obi-Wan is a broken man from the one who we saw, trading quips with General Grievous, jumping headstrong into fights like, I got this. Like, that was my biggest concern. And so whenever we do see Obi-Wan do some really dope stuff, it's going to feel well-earned, because at least right as far as now, it's like, yo, he's getting to work. Also, other detail, I like that they're leaning into like, hey, you can injure characters grievously in Star Wars without it being a maiming.
Yeah, just burn them instead.
Basically, so sometimes when a character's going to be alive later because of the timeline, that can hurt the stakes a little bit, right? Because well, they don't die because they appear in the rest of these movies. And so when they're in dangerous situations, you can be a little less invested. I think they've done a good job of still making the stakes feel high, because a character doesn't have to die to still have something really bad happen to them. And like in Obi-Wan's case, old man Obi-Wan isn't like some maimed old man, but it makes sense that like, yeah, I guess you did get into some stuff where you got dragged through some fire, and maybe that doesn't visibly show X years later, but it still made the stakes feel real of like, okay, Obi-Wan's not going to die, but yo, he just got burned through fire. I'm like, how is this going to affect your ability to perform in the rest of this plot? And I think that's a hard thing to do when you have characters who die later in a timeline for something they appear in.
I'm getting excited by the idea that maybe Vader at some point in the series cuts Obi-Wan in half, and then Obi-Wan gets cybernetic legs or something like that. And we didn't know the whole time.
His legs were actually cybernetic.
Alec McGinnis had metal legs.
Oh, God.
Okay, wait, let me bring up something that my buddy Miles brought up to me. So he was asking, did any of us pick up on the idea that Leia was using the Force, or at least Force sensitive, in the show?
Yeah.
I think I thought about it, but they don't really telegraph it. They don't really.
I didn't pick up on that at all, but he was like, I feel like it's very obvious that they're going that direction.
I agree. I felt a similar way.
Where did you pick up on like, oh, maybe she's using the Force here, or she is using the Force here in some way?
There was a small throwaway line that they even said about hunting Force sensitives, and it was clearly said in a way that was kind of like the only Force sensitive around would probably be Leia. And it makes sense, right? Because she's also I think they're trying to lean more into like the original series clearly set up Luke as the child of prophecy, even though they were twins. I think the Obi-Wan show is trying to retcon things a little bit to kind of have it to where Leia wasn't just basically de-emphasized throwing aside because she was the girl. Like, let's just call it how we see it. I think they're trying to, like, but even in the original movies, though, they kind of hint at Leia having some Force-sensitive moments. Like, there's some hints to it, so it's not completely unfounded, but I thought specifically the throwaway line about hunting Force sensitives, and then they kind of pan to Leia's face, and then, of course, she's the child of the most powerful Force, one of the most powerful Force users ever. And we know from later Star Wars movies that she does tap into her Force potential. So we know that she is Force sensitive. Like, remember, there's a whole point in Star Wars, like 5 or something, or not 5, 8, where she's in space and she, like, uses the Force to drag herself out of space. Like, it's not completely out of nowhere. So I think Miles' point definitely, I don't know how important it's going to be, but she definitely has a connection with the Force. And it makes sense that they tap into that because she's Luke's twin. Why wouldn't she if he does?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I never thought of anything of her as like being Force sensitive throughout the show. So far, it seems to me that she's just sort of been analytical, right? We know she's precocious. She's fairly, quote unquote, smart. She's good at analyzing situations. And Miles was like, maybe that is part of her Force sensitivity, right? Like Anakin, when he was a kid, was able to predict what was going to happen a little bit in the future through his pod racing, or he took advantage of that to be a pod racer. So maybe that's where this is going. Like she's better at reading people than Anakin
bullizing womp rats in his little thing all the time. That little line, like, that was a little throwaway line to show, he's really skilled at this thing, and part of that is because he's Force sensitive.
Yeah, and so her Force sensitivity maybe is coming out in like understanding the energies around her, the people around her, and trying to figure out like what their motivations are. Maybe, right? Like she analyzes the cousin. She has a feeling about Freck, which like actually that turns out to be totally wrong. Maybe maybe she does a little bit of analyzing of Flea. Maybe she's able to use her Force sensitivity to do stuff like that. But to me, it just felt like she was just a kid who was really smart, precocious, able to kind of tap into what she saw them doing and then kind of put it together. But maybe there is some Force sensitivity there.
I think her uncanny ability to evade captors and foot chases shows that she's an extreme Force sensitive.
Yeah, that's just straight up using Force speed. No, but
not consistent.
But I don't know if there's anything that I don't know if she's done anything that you could say is a direct thing of her Force sensitivity, but at the very least, I think they're gonna build on it later. Like I think she might have a moment down the line, these next few episodes, where she shows that she has some way to connect to the Force. I don't know what that's gonna look like, but clearly the movies have expanded on just what you can do with the Force, right? Like even Reva, she has clearly a unique ability. If she touches you, she can clearly get information out of you in a way that other Force sensitives can't. So
yeah,
they're opening up what the Force is and isn't capable of. So even if she hasn't shown anything yet.
But I mean, Reva's using a power that the Jedi have used a lot, and Kylo Ren used a lot.
Yeah, but I was imagining that. Yeah, but also those are like some of the really, like Kylo Ren's kind of also one of those super super gifted prodigy types.
Yeah,
my understanding of that was because we hadn't seen anyone else use that ability so far. She used it in a very specific way, and then more so, the Grand Inquisitor, even earlier episode, talks about how she was brought in because she has special gifts. She clearly, even with her really off the rail action, she hasn't pissed off Vader. So it's clear that she's almost there because she's like almost like a gifted student program of like, hey, even if you're non-traditional.
Maybe she teaches Vader about that, right? Because Vader does in episode 4, I think, start reading people's minds a little bit, or getting
Star Wars. Yeah, Star Wars has established, whether it's through the games, even like it happens in like that game Fallen Order, they've established that they're non-Skywalker level Force users who have unique abilities that other people don't have. And so people still, even villains, try to leverage that or learn more about it. Like that's not a new thing in Star Wars. So I mean, it's literally Palpatine's whole scheme with Vader. Like, oh, he's ridiculously strong. I gotta make sure I groom him into using his powers. So, we'll
I'm
see.
just hoping they actually don't do too much with her Force powers, because in A New Hope, she very much does not use her Force powers at all. It's not until really episode 5 where she sort of has a connection to Luke at the bottom of Cloud City, where she's like, "Wait, we have to go back. I can feel him." Right?
Yeah.
But that was because they had built this connection between each other during the whole 2 movies that it sort of comes out at that point, and she senses his danger. It wouldn't feel consistent if she's a Force user now as a 10-year-old, and then somehow when she's 18 or 20 or whatever, no longer has like knowledge of the Force at all, or power. Like that would seem a little bit silly. I think.
I mean, but they've established that. Like you said it yourself, Force sensitivity manifests in a bunch of subtle non.
Yeah, so I'm hoping
Force
they keep it subtle and not like, oh, she's
no,
like
she's not.
lifting
Leia's
rocks.
not about to be moving stuff with her mind, dog. Okay. That's what you.
Yeah.
Like,
let's hope not.
That's not about to happen.
All right, let's wrap up with anything. Feel free to pass if you don't got anything. Do you have any concerns about the show? I don't really have too many concerns. I feel like I'm pretty good with where they're going so far, and I'm just hoping that the story is good. I don't have any predictions about where we're going. I'm just along for the ride. Savon, do you have any concerns?
I haven't really been impressed by a lot of the action scenes. I think a lot of the stuff with Boba Fett that was mediocre, I was able to kind of look past it because I at least had action scenes that were a lot more engaging. Obi-Wan hasn't really quite done that for me yet. And so I'm just hoping there's not more of the, episode 2 him navigating through that city type stuff. Because if I'm getting more of that, that's going to put a huge damper on this show.
I like those in that he's not using his force powers.
No. The idea of them was fine.
Yeah.
The concept. This is 100% execution.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Tikon thing.
Definitely.
Like I said, the free drugs, the him just half-ass hiding his identity.
You really don't like free drugs, man.
It just felt like something that like your uncle who writes, who's never done drugs in his life, would imagine this type of encounter would go. Like, what'd you do if you want drugs? I'm gonna just go up and offer it to you. I'm like, sure, dude.
And
Like,
wasn't the drug dealer like a kid too? It was like
The
a
drug
kid
dealer is
giving
his
this
real-life
old
daughter.
man with a beard. Like,
Yeah.
come on.
It was just his real life daughter doing a cameo. It was so unnecessary. But nah, I'm just hoping that there's fewer of those kind of just like hokey stormtrooper aim, long extended. We just need to move the plot forward moments. And I'm hoping we get like a legit high quality action scene that we got a lot of in Mando and Boba Fett. Like the Darth Vader Obi-Wan fight was cool in the sense of watching Obi-Wan get worked, but even then it was like Obi-Wan's running away in this really goofy, almost lost kid at Walmart type. Like I want a little bit more tightness and cohesion with some of the action scenes down the line, especially with the cool cast of characters they have who lend themselves to really entertaining fight scenes.
Brian.
Yeah, they better not botch that, because I think this show deserves a really, well orchestrated, well choreographed action scene that caps off all this tension that has been building up. And if they're not able to capitalize, I think it could severely undercut the show, right? You'll just look at everything else and be like, man, that ride was not worth it. If they continue to botch action scenes with inconsistencies and, just illogical scenarios, it'll really detract from the overall experience. And then the other thing, which Savan has in his notes, but I'm going to mention as well, is that Leia herself is a really obnoxious character and not like the greatest actress either. And so her ability to move the plot forward and, how everything revolves around her being returned to her parents, there's a part of that I kind of don't care as much about, because I'm not invested in her as a character. I feel like deterred by her. Why are you laughing?
They just beat that point into the ground. Like it's
just like
because
so many shows with these kids.
Brian is like, like maybe it'd be better if she got caught by the Empire and whatever.
I mean, in a way, I don't know.
They should have just never had they could have gotten her and just not kidnapped in the first. I don't know. I'm just sick of them having to escort a kid, and then the kid makes them realize something about themselves that they should have been blah 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 blah, and then they grow, and I'm like, dude.
Yeah, and part of it is that too, right? Like we did Grogu already, and now we're doing Leia,
Anakin.
Yeah, we did Anakin before, and like we kind of know what happens to Leia, and so it's like, I don't know. Like, did they need this as the plot device? Right? Like, did she have to be the thing that, Obi-Wan has to protect and save? Like, I don't know.
She'd have had a smaller
something
role.
about that is like, it just feels kind of forced and unoriginal. I don't really know where they're going to take it.
I think it only works because we know that Obi-Wan is trying to hide. He's trying to make zero waves and be completely undetected.
Yeah.
The only thing that would make him come out of hiding would have to be really, really important. In Star Wars world, Leia is that important. And we can't have another Luke story because Luke's story comes about in episode 4. So that's one of your options, right?
See,
I'm
how
not
I
saying
feel
they
is that
I'm not saying
Leia's
they
story
couldn't have
comes
done
out
something
too.
different, but I think it makes sense in the idea that like Obi-Wan's not coming out of his hermit shell for just any old story. He let that other Jedi die. He's not trying to like compromise his one mission right now, which is to stay hidden so that he can help Luke when Luke is ready. So I get that a little bit.
At the end of episode 3, though, they're separated, and Obi-Wan has already confronted Vader, and it's very clear that Vader wants Kenobi, right? He wants to make him suffer.
Yeah.
And they're still going after Leia, or like Third Sister's going after her. So it's
No, Third Sister goes after her to get to him.
Yeah, initially she was using Leia as bait.
Yeah, she doesn't care about Leia. She doesn't know Leia's important.
But like Vader's already confronting Obi-Wan. You see what I'm saying? It's like, well, okay, so the bait, you've already accomplished what you wanted to, Vader, in a way, right? Like you know, Kenobi's out in the open. He's plumb for the taking. And you still have Third Sister going after the bait, which, you know, it's like, I don't get it. I'm not entirely sure where they're going to go with this. And why Leia is even necessary at that point, especially when they don't recognize that, you know, she is Anakin's daughter.
Well, she has to teach Obi-Wan about himself.
Yeah, exactly. They gotta help him open up to the Force again. Woohoo! Yeah. Like he should be already able to do that.
Yeah. Also, I don't know that he can. I mean, maybe they will, but that would be kind of disappointing because he wasn't using the Force when we see him in the next time that we see him.
But he's still trying to do his Qui-Gon training too, because we know he learns how to do the Force Ghost stuff. So I'm kind of just wondering, okay, where's that come in?
It's got to come in the show, 100%. Yeah. They've spent too much time on him not doing it to not have it work out.
We're gonna see Liam Neeson.
Oh,
right?
God.
Like it's gonna happen.
Yeah. That's okay. I'm okay with that. All right. So we'll see where it goes in the next 3 episodes, and then we'll talk about it at the end once we've wrapped up. Hit us up at confidently_pod on Instagram. You know, answer our stories, questions that Savon's been putting up there. Chat with Savon and tell him what you think about the show. Tell him what you think about some upcoming shows. We got what's coming up next. We got Boys. We're going to talk about that on our next episode, releasing on Amazon. What was the other one that's coming out? Ms. Marvel is coming out really soon.
Yeah, Ms. Marvel coming out next week.
Yeah, so we're excited for those. So if you're listening to this and you're excited or you have questions about those shows, send them our way so that we can talk about them on our next shows. Friends, we're out.
Bye-bye.